Hi, my name is Marcus Huskins, and I'm a producer, mixer, engineer from just outside the Toronto, Canada area. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new integration we have between Studio One version 4.1 and Revoice Pro version 4. Now, Revoice Pro is one of the first plugins to utilize the brand new ARA2 protocol, which essentially allows these two applications to talk to each other seamlessly in the background. So let's go about getting our work sent over from Studio One into Revoice Pro. So the first step is we need to get our audio sent over from the Studio One timeline into Revoice Pro. But before we do that, let's have a really quick listen to this session over here. I'm just going to solo out these 3 tracks and we'll play from this point. Let's have a quick listen.
My heart is an ocean, nothing can save.
Okay, so we've got some obvious timing issues that we need to take care of. And in addition to that, we also have a tuning issue that we have to correct in the lead vocal.
My heart is an ocean.
And last but not least, I also noticing some sibilance here, as indicated by this condensed area in the waveform. I'd like to use Revoice Pro to transparently reduce that.
Save it.
So, how do we go about doing this? Well, it couldn't be easier. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to select all of the audio events that are residing on these 4 tracks. Now, one thing I want to mention really quickly is we also have a mono harmony that was recorded over here in the lower register, and I'd like to use Revoice Pro to create a stereo double from this mono file. So once we have all these audio events highlighted, we can head over to the audio menu, and you'll notice we have this new option, Edit with Revoice Pro. Now this is also available if we right-click any highlighted audio events. We will also find this in the audio menu over here. So let's go ahead, we'll click Edit with Revoice Pro. Now the minute we click that option, we see this Revoice Pro link floating window. Another thing worth mentioning is that as long as you have Revoice Pro running in the background, it will also create a Revoice Pro document. Now, full disclosure, in an effort to keep the runtime of this video down, I've already gone ahead and created my Revoice Pro session, and I've saved that as my default session, so it already has the proper track names, and in addition, I've already created the extra tracks that I need in Revoice Pro to accommodate all my processing outputs. Okay, so let's just go ahead and resize our Studio One window. And now this is just a simple matter of selecting the track and choosing the destination track in Revoice Pro. So I'm just going to go ahead here and I'm going to map these out really quickly. And you'll see that as I choose the destination track from my drop-down menu in the Revoice Pro link plugin, that everything is being sent over to Revoice Pro. So that's it. We've got all of our audio sent over to Revoice Pro. Now let's hop into Revoice Pro. Okay, so first things first, you might notice that we have a different view here in terms of our track headers. That's because these are now dynamic and we can expand them as needed to suit our workflow. I happen to like mine set up somewhere around here, so we'll go ahead and leave that. Now, another new feature that we have in version 4 is we have an ability to create groups really quickly. So for example, I'm going to shift select both of these tracks and just drag them to this section over here on the right. This allows me to create a quick group. And this is auto-named based on the track names. We can also expand this if we wanted to edit these names, but I'm fine with that. And I also want to leave this view over here. And of course, when we create a group, we have the benefit of being able to toggle either the mute or solo for all tracks belonging to that group, as well as the visibility. Now, one powerful feature that I like to pair that with is if you head to tracks and auto-size track heights, then I could, for example, mute all of the tracks in this group, toggle the visibility off, and you'll notice that my tracks have auto-sized according to the full vertical resolution that I have available. If I click the visibility, these 2 tracks have been brought back in, and again, my tracks auto-size. So now that we know that these tracks are being muted, let's get them out of the picture, and let's focus on using Revoice Pro to fix these problems. Now, the first thing I want to deal with is let's go ahead and solo our lead vocal, and I'm going to right click and make this a warp region. This is going to give us access to some of the tuning tools that we have available in Revoice Pro. Now, in addition, I'm also going to make this full vertical height. So let's go ahead now. I'm going to use my T key to zoom in, and I just want to focus on fixing this issue right over here. Let's have a quick listen.
My heart is an ocean.
Okay, let's just grab this note and pull it up in tune. Have a quick listen again.
My heart is an ocean, nothing.
Okay, perfect. That's sounding great. Now, the next thing I want to focus on is you'll notice these aqua blue areas which have highlighted. This is indicating anything that could be either a breath or a consonant or a sibilant. I want to use a built-in feature in Revoice Pro to allow me to take care of some of these sibilants. So I'm going to go ahead and click the S key on my keyboard. And let's just grab this slider and adjust the amplitude of this display. And now anywhere you see this pink outline versus purple, we can essentially click and hold. So this is auditioning that sound. Now if I hold down my Alt or Option key, I can snap this up or down in 3 dB increments. You'll notice that this waveform updated. Or in addition to that, I can also make manual adjustments simply by clicking and dragging. Okay, so I've adjusted that. I could grab each section where I see these problems. And again, they're very easy to identify because we have that pink highlighted area in terms of the energy display. And I'm just pulling these down so that this sounds a little bit more transparent and my de-esser doesn't have to work as hard. Now, once I'm done, I will click my S key to exit out of that view. And let's zoom back out a bit. And now essentially we're done with this particular aspect of what we need to do. So let's go ahead. We'll return back to our default view. The next thing we need to do is we need to adjust the timing of these two tracks so that they perfectly match our main lead vocal, which is our main timing guide. So let's go ahead. We're going to unsolo this track over here. And I'm going to go ahead and click the B key, which will bring up my new process window. In this case, we want to create an APT, which stands for Audio Performance Transfer. We'll use Selected Audio as a length, and let's go to the presets over here. I'm going to go to Factory Presets. You'll notice that we have these two new options over here. So I'm sure most of you are used to seeing vocal, slightly loose time and pitch, for example. You'll see that we now have music, slightly loose time and pitch. Now the idea here is that we have a new algorithm that's been added in 4.0. So even though I didn't really notice any issues with the pitch of both of these tracks, we just want to use the timing. Let's use this new preset, music, slightly loose time and pitch, as the starting point. Now, another thing to point out is that I don't necessarily want to create two separate processes. I want to be able to create both of those processes in one step. So let's go ahead and use some of these features over here to do this. So we need to choose our guide. We know this is going to be our lead vocal, which is our main timing guide. Then I want to choose the first dub track. Now the dub track is the one that we're going to be processing from the DAW. So we'll choose this, but now we're going to choose this fix offset option. And then the next thing that we need to do is we need to determine the first output track that we want the fixed output to land on. So I've already created these two new tracks and named them. I'm going to choose this one over here. And last but not least, we want to click this drop down arrow and I want to choose 2 because I want to create 2 processes at the same time. Let's go ahead and run this. So now you can see that Revoice Pro has gone ahead and it's created that process. Now let's solo out these tracks over here and let's have a listen to the results. We'll play from the top.
My heart is an ocean, nothing can save it, nothing at all.
Excellent. Just as a reminder to where we started.
My heart is an ocean.
Okay, so huge difference there. Okay, one thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pan these out because I want to hear these in a little bit more of a musical context. And there's a couple other things I wanted to point out as well. You may notice this section over here on the right side of my Revoice Pro screen. We have these new APT visibility views. And what this essentially allows us to do is toggle the information that we either want to see or don't want to see. So, for example, this energy trace over here, I could simply click this option over here to toggle the visibility off. Now, the same can be said for things such as the guide pitch, or for example, the dub pitch, and in addition to that, the output pitch. So if we focused our attention over here, you can see that we have this white line, which is representing the new output pitch that's a result of using the pitch from our original track and imparting that onto our guide track. So if I was to deselect this, you'll notice that that disappeared. So this is really personal preference in terms of how much information you want to see, but this type of thing can be really useful in terms of determining how much processing is actually happening with respect to your audio. So let's go ahead, back up a bit and have a quick listen.
My heart is an ocean, nothing can save it, nothing at all.
Awesome. Okay, so before we create our stereo harmony, one other thing that I want to focus on really quickly is a new feature that was added in Revoice Pro 4, and that is warp vibrato points. So let's go ahead here. I'm going to just click the Option or Alt Solo to unsolo all the tracks, and then I'm going to solo track 1, and let's go full screen on this. So with this track soloed out, let's have a quick listen to this section.
Nothing at all.
Okay, so this is what we would expect to hear. This is the natural performance that the singer gave us. Let's go ahead over here, and I'm going to choose my warp point tool, and I want to just add a warp point over here to anchor down this section, and let's add another one over here. Now the next thing I want to do is let's add a warp vibrato start and end point. Now the way that we do this is we right click and we have to determine the point at which we want it to be added. So for example, I'm going to choose this point over here, right click, warp points, and I'm going to add a vibrato start warp point over here. And then after this section over here, after the word is done, let's go ahead, right click, warp points, and let's add a vibrato end warp point. Okay, so now, again, we can have a listen to this performance.
Nothing at all.
Now with regular time compression or expansion, if we were to drag out this audio to make a change to this, keep in mind I've anchored down my after and my before with normal warp points, this is what we would expect to happen. You can see that this has been elongated. Now I've pulled this quite a bit so it might not sound natural, but let's pay attention to the vibrato.
Nothing at all.
Okay, so that's what we would expect, and that's completely normal because all we're doing is time compressing or expanding that section of audio. Now let's take a look at what warp vibrato points do. So if we hover to the very top and click, you'll notice we have this purple section with these dotted lines. Let's drag this out now. Keep your eye on the vibrato pitch trace. It changed. Let's have a listen to this.
Nothing at all.
You see what happened there? We actually changed the vibrato. So that's what Revoice Pro 4 is doing. As opposed to just time compressing or expanding, it's actually reinterpreting the vibrato and redrawing it in a more natural context. But this is for a completely different video altogether. Just wanted to point that out. Let's go ahead and have one more listen to that.
Nothing at all.
Versus.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Pretty amazing, but let's leave that for another video. I'm just going to shift click to delete my warp points that I've added over here. And let's bring ourselves back to our regular view. Okay, so we've gone ahead and we've done everything that we need to do. In fact, let's take these tracks, do the same thing. I'm going to shift select all of them. Let's drag these off over here. And what I'm going to do is mute all the tracks in that group. Let's also toggle the visibility off. Let's bring the visibility back for our harmony track. So now essentially all we need to do is create our stereo double from this mono harmony track that we have. Let's have a listen.
My heart is an ocean. Nothing can save it.
Okay, perfect. We're going to click the B key to bring up our new process tab. And I'm going to now select doubler as opposed to APT. And this is pretty easy. I'm just going to choose a preset that works for me. So we'll go into factory presets, stereo vocal mild. Now, instead of selected audio, I could use that, but we've got a lot of information at the top and tail. So if I was to simply click a playback range, you'll notice that my in point and my out point changed. So let's go ahead and use this playback range. Now we just need to set our input track, which is our Vox low harmony from DAW. And we need to set our output track, which is already set up properly. We'll go ahead and create this new process. Awesome. Let's have a quick listen to this.
My heart is an ocean.
Okay, sounds good on its own.
My heart is an ocean. Nothing.
Okay, so that sounds fine to me. If I wanted to make any changes, it's as simple as selecting the output track, clicking the P key, and then of course, this being a stereo doubler process, I could choose to view either the left or right channels, and I could make any changes if I needed. Okay, so now essentially we are done. We have all the work done that we needed to get done. Let's go ahead and bring back our visibility. We can do a really quick listen here to see what we've done in general. So I'm just gonna use this function over here to unmute all of these tracks. Now let's listen to the original tracks that we had.
My heart is an ocean.
And now we'll listen to our finished work that we used Revoice Pro to create.
My heart is an ocean. Nothing can save it. Nothing at all.
Okay, perfect. Now here by far is the absolute best part about using Revoice Pro 4 with Studio One and the ARA2 integration. Now that we have all of our work done, the process of getting this back into the DAW is actually really seamless. So for example, if I was to go back into my Studio One timeline and hit play, let's have a listen.
My heart is an ocean. Nothing can save it. Nothing at all.
So regardless of the fact that you see these waveforms are out of alignment over here, the Studio One timeline is actually playing back the results from the Revoice Pro session. And the great thing is that this Revoice Pro session is actually saved within your Studio One song. So if I was 98% done, but I wanted to take a little break and come back to this, I could save this song and this work would be fully recalled in my Studio One song the next time I open it up. So that's a really great option. And with the exception of obviously the stereo double, which we would have to bring back manually, that would work for all of the tracks that are associated. But let's talk about the whole concept of this workflow one step further. Now, essentially, once we've used Revoice Pro to do all the alignment that we need, there's really no sense in leaving a Revoice Pro session active. So at this point, we have some other options that are available in terms of our workflow. You'll notice that if I select an event over here, and if you have your inspector open in your event effects, we have the option to, for example, render. So if I was to render this track over here, actually, let's go back to our split screen over here so we can see both sets of information. Let me just resize my Studio One screen. Let's go ahead and select this track over here and click render. I want you to keep your eye on what happens in our Revoice Pro session. You'll notice that that track disappeared. So this is because Studio One and Revoice Pro were communicating and using the audio events. Now that we've rendered this file in Studio One, it no longer needs to be in the Revoice Pro session. Now let's talk about another approach. We have the render option, which we can use, but another option we have is a good old-fashioned event and bounce selection. So if you know that you've done the work and it sounds perfect and you're willing to commit to it, that's another option we have. So I could, for example, just go to event and I could just bounce this selection. Or in this case, I can just use a shortcut that I have available. Again, keep your eye on Revoice Pro over here. So this has now bounced this audio over here. Now we can do the same thing with respect to our lead track, because keep in mind, we used some functions in Revoice Pro where we adjusted the tuning and we manually edited some of these sibilants. So in this case, again, I could use the bounce or render option. Let's go ahead and render that. Now, one thing you'll notice is it didn't remove itself from Revoice Pro. This is because we made this into a warp region. So this isn't that big of a deal, but keep in mind that any editing that we did in Revoice Pro has been rendered into this new file. Keep in mind we had that tuning issue. Let's have a quick listen.
My heart is an ocean, nothing can save it.
And we also manually adjusted those sibilants, so that sounds great. So last but not least, let's talk about this stereo double. Now essentially we have two different ways that we could bring this back. One would be by holding Shift or Alt Option, clicking until we get this icon and dragging it into our timeline. But another option that we have, and the one that I'm going to use, is that we can select this processed output, and in our Revoice Pro menu, I want to copy my selected process output. Now come back into Studio One, I'm going to choose the proper destination track, I'm going to go to Edit, and paste at original position. Now once this happens, everything has been brought over. And now last but not least, because we needed this track to create the double, but we're not necessarily doing any processing on it, we have another option if we go to our audio menu where we can remove Revoice Pro. Now keep your eye on the screen. When this happens, remove Revoice Pro. This has now disappeared completely from the Revoice Pro session because anything that we needed from Revoice Pro has been rendered in Studio One. So it's no longer necessarily tied to the Studio One song. Now at this point over here, we essentially have everything we need, and if we were to play back our tracks now, we should have a great, realistic sounding performance.
My heart is an ocean, nothing can save it, nothing at all. So twisted and broken, lost in the storm.
So that's using Revoice Pro version 4 and the amazing ARA2 technology with Studio One version 4.1. If you're interested in learning about other new Revoice Pro 4 features, including the amazing new warp vibrato points, make sure you head over to the Synchro Arts website for more details. As always, I hope you guys got something from this, and we'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.